there's so many emerging studies now. Heart disease is the number one killer of women in the US. And so what's happening is lack of estrogen levels are messing with the endothelial function of arteries. It is harming your bones because you need estrogen for bone growth. And, I'm just scratching the surface with that.
Tired of feeling exhausted after training? Confused about how to fuel your body without all the food rules? Welcome to Female Sports Nutrition, where I'll help you fuel strong, build muscle, and perform your best, all while breaking free from diet culture. I'm Kristen, a sports dietitian, trainer, and Jesus lover, and I'm here to help you fuel with freedom. Lace up your shoes, grab that smoothie, and let's jump in. I'm so excited to have my friend Cynthia here with me today. She is the Period Nutritionist. Cynthia and I actually went to grad school together, and I'm very excited to have her on the show today to talk about all the things that she does. And so I'm going to hand the floor over to Cynthia. So Cynthia, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, Kristen. I'm so excited to be here. And who would have thought, gosh, how long have we been out of college for? I think like 15 years.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So who would have ever thought we'd be recording a podcast together 15 years later, and being in very similar fields of work as dietitians. So I'm super excited to be here and be on your podcast. Okay, a little bit about me. So I have been a dietitian just as long as Kristen has, and I support women who are struggling with missing menstrual cycles due to overtraining and under fueling. So, and I know what you might be thinking potentially if you're an athlete, or like what I like to call as a recreational athlete, where you work out like an athlete, but you're really like not on a team or something like that. You're going to the gym every day, that you might say, well, I don't overtrain. I have never overtrained before, and I'm just exercising every day like everyone else I know does. And so in short, I was one of those women where I thought, no, I'm not training too much and I'm not an athlete, so I'm fine. Well, come to find out, not so much. So I'm going to share a little bit about my story too, but hypothalamic amenorrhea is what I am here to talk about today. And hypothalamic amenorrhea doesn't fit in a box. I remember when I was in college, I learned about HA. I'm going to call it HA for short. And I'm like, well, I don't fit the bill. Because the bill was that you had to have an eating disorder. I did not have an eating disorder. You had to be a low BMI. I did not have a low BMI. You had to be an athlete. I was not an athlete. So I'm like, there's no way I have HA. Nope. It must be something else. And granted, I got a diagnosis after 5 years, you guys, of trying to figure out why my period was missing. 5 years. And so it took me so I was on the pill for quite some time because I had painful periods when I was younger, when I first got my period. And so that's the fix. Like, go on the pill. You're fine. Go on the pill. So yes. So I went on the pill as per my doctor recommended. And I just want a side note, like, the pill is not a treatment for any menstrual irregularity, whether it's a missing period, a painful period, a sporadic period, whatever. It's like the birth control pill was made to prevent you from having babies, not for acne, not for any of that. Anyway, I won't get on my soapbox about the pill, but so I was on the pill for years, came off, my period was nowhere to be found. Doctors assured me that it was normal. Your missing period is normal. You were on the pill for so long. And just another side note, that is not normal. You should get a menstrual cycle as soon as you come off that pill, at least within 30 days, 35 days, maybe 40 days tops. It should happen right away. There's no such thing as post-pill amenorrhea. Like, if you have truly functioning hormones that are normal, it's going to come back right away. So went on a wild goose chase, and doctors told me to go back on the pill or just wait until I'm ready to have kids, and you can do fertility treatment. It's not a big deal. My period was missing. And so, but I'm like, no. I know. There's got to be a reason. So I searched looking for doctors to tell me the answer. No answer. Finally, a doctor was like, oh, you have PCOS. And I'm like, oh, I do. Okay. All right, well, maybe that's it. So then I started treating my PCOS. And back in the day, it was like, okay, make sure you're carb conscious. Like, don't eat too many carbs, exercise all the time. So as soon as I got that diagnosis, I was like, I'm kicking this up a notch. Like, I got to be super healthy, like PCOS, now I'm at risk for this and that and the other thing. And so I went even healthier. Little did I know at the time it was really HA, and I'll come to that. But the PCOS thing, the doctors diagnosed me based on ultrasound. They saw these tiny little cysts on my ovaries, which you guys, are follicles. They're follicles, and they call them cysts. And the thing is that when you have HA, you're stuck in the follicular phase of your menstrual cycle. There's no moving to ovulation. There's no moving to your luteal phase. There's no period because you don't have enough FSH, LH, and estrogen to get those follicles to grow. So they just hang out, and doctors are like, oh, you have PCOS. So there's other diagnostic criteria that goes along with PCOS. And a lot of doctors will be like, oh, here's your ultrasound. So it has to fit 2 out of the 3 criteria, which is polycystic ovaries, an absent or irregular period, and then androgen levels that are elevated. And so I only had the polycystic ovaries and the missing period. But again, they weren't really polycystic ovaries. It was just my follicles aren't able to grow because I didn't have hormones. So then that was a thing for, I don't know, a couple years. And then I'm like, oh, my period's still not back. I'm approaching 30 now. I want to have kids someday. And so then I was like, well, the hell with it. Like, I might as well go seek fertility treatment because no one's telling me anything. Finally, my OBGYN, and this is, I don't know, 3 doctors later, go to this reproductive endocrinologist an hour away, and maybe he can help you. I'm like, okay, this is my last straw. And so he's like, oh yeah, you have HA, like right off the bat. I'm like, oh no, I don't. No, I don't. I'm a dietitian. Like, I learned this in college. Like I said before earlier on the podcast, I didn't fit the bill of at least what I thought. And then the research began, and I found out that I really, truly did have HA. And, it doesn't fit into a box. You can be a normal, quote, overweight BMI. Like, my BMI was approaching the overweight category because I think I had a lot of muscle mass on me. And then also my body was retaining all of this, like, weight because I was pretty much starving it, not intentionally, because, I thought, well, I'm not losing any weight, so I must be eating enough. Like, it doesn't work that way. The body doesn't work that way. And you know what? They taught us in dietitian school, or whatever you want to call it, college, that's how it works. Energy in versus energy out. Yes.
And I still see it on the internet. There are certain people on Instagram that I follow. One of them has a PhD, and they're like, oh, it's just calories in, calories out. I'm like, no, it is not. It's not like that for everybody. Yeah.
No, not even close. So, that was confusing though. So I was, taking what I learned, and then now what I'm like having to unlearn to be like, okay, is this a thing? Do I really need to like not exercise? But it's so healthy for me. Like, this can't be true. And not only that, my identity was completely tied around it. I was a CrossFit, like at the time, I was CrossFitting, and like, I loved it. I friggin' loved it. And I'm like, there's no way like something so healthy is turning me unhealthy, and I'm eating enough. And I'm not even going to mention a calorie level. It was not an unreasonable amount of calories I was eating, like the amount of it. But now looking at it for the amount of training I was doing, it was like, yeah, you were starving yourself. But I like to say you only know what you know when you know it. At that time, that's what I knew. And so I got the diagnosis. I meddled with that for a while, because I was scared to gain weight. I was scared that I would totally lose everything I worked my ass off for, including, being one of the top athletes at the gym. Everyone being like, oh my gosh, Cynthia, you're so disciplined. Like, look at you. Like, you work so hard, and, you look so good, like the little fit dietitian. So that was a tough pill to swallow. But at the same time, I knew at that particular time I wanted kids, and I knew I needed to change my behaviors. And so I decided to embark on fertility treatment because at that time it was going on 5 years of me trying to figure this whole thing out. And so I did 1 round of IUI, and the doctor was like, you need to go right to injectables. Your hypothalamus is pretty much shut down. So like Clomid or like low dose fertility treatment isn't going to work. So I'm like, okay, let's do it. And so 2 rounds failed. And then I finally got pregnant on my 3rd round. And I really attribute that 3rd round of it working due to me finally like taking a break with exercise, fueling my body more. Like, I was doing little bits and pieces of it. But then ultimately, I think the biggest thing was the mindset change. The me like just surrendering and letting go to what was and what needed to be in order for me to be my healthiest self. And so I'll save the kind of the long journey to that, but I conceived my little guy, who is now 9 years old. I can't even believe it. Like, it's wild how quickly time goes by. And so I decided in 2020, I'm like, okay, like, this is a friggin' thing for so many women, and they're getting the runaround from their doctors. Like, I don't want any woman to ever struggle the way I did for as long as I did. And plus, like now that I am living a free life around food and around exercise, and I'll explain more about that later, it's like I don't want to just support women in getting their periods back and restoring their fertility and having babies. I want them to live a full, free life around this, because life is too short to live thinking like, oh my gosh, did I have 2 bagels today? And like, how many calories is that? And like, I better run 2 extra miles. And I hope this doesn't sound condescending, because if this is you, like I was there, and it's not the most fun way to live. So anyway, so going back to hypothalamic amenorrhea. So in short, it is a missing period, a lack of, and you're not ovulating. So therefore you cannot get pregnant. And it's one of the most common types of amenorrhea. So there is primary amenorrhea, secondary amenorrhea. So there's women out there, Kristen, that I've worked with, that have never gotten a cycle in their lives, like no period at all.
Wow.
And a lot of them are athletes or dancers and so forth. And they're like, oh, well, my doctor said it's normal because I'm so active.
Yep.
I just want to say a missing period is never normal. Never. Especially after the age and I'm even giving grace, like 14, 15, like after that, if you didn't get a period, like red flag, and it is not normal. And so anyway, so, you don't have a missing period. Your hypothalamus is pretty much kind of dormant or kind of shut down, and it is not producing the necessary hormones for you to have a menstrual cycle, such as estrogen, FSH, LH, progesterone. So the fix for it is easy, kind of, and it's enough food and nourishment for the body and enough rest for the body. And therefore you can restore your menstrual cycle. But it's easier said than done, because there's a lot of stuff that's attached to it. It's like, well, what if I gain all this weight? What if I can't perform at the ability that I could perform at? And, so HA is a super common diagnosis, and it can be masked by the pill, and it can be misdiagnosed with PCOS. And then you can also have what I like to call, I don't want to say it's HA, because HA it's a missing period or a lack of, but there's some athletes out there that are getting regular, but they're anovulatory cycle, so they're not ovulating.
Right.
And then there's women/athletes out there that are having regular ovulatory cycles, but their luteal phase is too short. And so when your luteal phase is too short, that means you're not producing enough progesterone. And if you want to get pregnant, if you don't have enough progesterone, you're not going to have this beautiful, thick little lining for that baby to implant into. So, sometimes HA can come out of nowhere, where it's like, oh, I've had these regular periods, and then it goes missing. But it's also like, did you really have a regular period? Because unless you were tracking your cycle to the T, knowing how long your luteal phase is, and when you're ovulating, you don't technically know if your cycle was 100% regular.
So break it down for everybody as to what is what phase, because I feel like this is kind of confusing. Like a lot of people, I feel like just, you don't know, you never,
oh my gosh,
learned that.
Totally. So Kristen, when I found out like I had, a missing period, I'm like, a follicular phase? Like what? Luteal? Like I just get a period every month. Like what are you talking about?
Right.
Like ovulation? Like can't you just get pregnant at any time? I spent so many years trying not to get pregnant, and then, thinking I can get pregnant at any time. So anyway, you have your menstrual cycle has different phases. So you have your period, so your menstrual phase, then you have your follicular phase, followed by your ovulatory phase, followed by your luteal phase. So when you have HA, pretty much you're stuck in your follicular phase. Like you don't have the necessary hormones to progress you to ovulation. And then
the phase right after your period
yes,
ends. Right. Okay.
Yes. And to ovulate, you need, like, if you don't ovulate, you're not getting pregnant ever. And I also want to side note this, like if you're listening and being like, oh, I'm going to turn this off because I'm not trying to get pregnant anytime soon. I don't even want babies, whatever. If you have HA, your bones are at risk. Your heart is at risk. There's so many emerging studies now, Kristen, that is indicating early on, like heart disease is the number one killer of women in the US. And so what's happening is lack of estrogen levels are messing with the endothelial function of like arteries. It is harming your bones because you need estrogen for bone growth. And, those, I'm just scratching the surface with that. But like a missing period is a big friggin' deal. And at the time I thought it was like, oh, I just can't get pregnant. Okay, no biggie. But no, it's your heart health. It's your bone health. You could be a frequent urinator. People think like, oh, I drink so much water, that's why I pee all the time. Like, no, girlfriend, it's probably from your lack of estrogen because it's thinning your your bladder lining walls. That's just one example of what lack of estrogen can do to frequent urination.
Interesting.
Yeah. So then, okay, so you have this missing period, and yes, it's a fertility issue, but it's also bigger than that. And then also too, like, to me, if your period is missing, like, something's off. Something is
Yeah.
off. And if you're an athlete, like, you want to perform. Like, that's what you do. You're an athlete. So we'll just take like a higher level athlete. Like, if you don't have a period, you may think you are really strong, but without estrogen, your muscles aren't repairing as they should. You're not getting proper recovery. And, there's just so much more involved in being an athlete. And I just think of, like, if every athlete had a period, like, how much stronger, and, like, it's wild. And I'm not going to go too much into that, but I can tell you, if you have a regular period, your performance is going to be better than it is with a missing period. But the transition of getting there, Kristen, is hard, because it's like, well, I got to rest. Like, I can't train as much or as often or as hard. And, like, aren't I going to lose all that?
Right.
And then I pose the question of, like, okay, well, no, you're not going to lose all that. You're going to come back even stronger. But also, what is it worth? Like, is it worth you retiring at 35 years old because you have stress fractures up the wahoo? So anyway, so you have your phases: ovulation, luteal. So luteal phase is particularly important if you want to have babies, but also it's important because if you aren't having a proper luteal phase, which is at least a minimum of 11 days long, then that's an indication that your hormones aren't completely where they should be. So, which can pose difficulties and eventually lead you to HA. So it's almost like a spectrum of, like, sometimes it can happen like that. But again, if we're on the pill, we have no idea what's going on in there. It masks everything. So, and I can't remember her name. I think her name was Stephanie, and I think she was a ultra runner, and she made the news for breastfeeding her child during her ultra race. Does that ring a bell to you at all, Kristen?
Yes, I saw pictures of her, but I don't know what her last name was.
Yeah, I don't either. But anyways, I ended up sending her a message on Instagram because I saw that I think she had multiple miscarriages. She had to do fertility treatments to conceive her baby. And I'm like, I wonder if she had a missing period. Like, I'm just curious, just because of the work that I do. So I reached out and I introduced myself, and she's like, no, I had a regular cycle. And so I left it as that. And I said, congratulations, on your baby and all the things. But what I was thinking about more deeply is, like, I wonder if she had luteal phase defect, because you see that so much in athletes. They have these regular cycles, but they're not able to carry the baby or conceive because of the lack of progesterone. And I didn't want to get into that with her because there's so much that isn't, like, talked about. And I didn't want to come across as, like, who is this random girl on, Instagram messaging me? But I questioned that. I'm like, could she not get pregnant because her level of activity was impeding her of having a healthy, regular menstrual cycle? I don't know that. I'm speculating that might be the thing.
Mm-hmm.
But in all cases, so many athletes, they're like, I'm so healthy. And you go to the doctor and the doctors are like, you're so healthy. Keep doing what you're doing.
Yes.
And then, and then you have infertility, or you have stress fractures, or you wonder why you can't get stronger in the gym, and so forth.
Yep.
So
absolutely. So I'm reading this book right now that is called, I think it's called Little Girls in Pretty Little Boxes or something like that. And have you ever heard of this book?
I have heard of it. And are they gymnasts?
Yes. It's about gymnasts and figure skaters. And
okay.
So I'm not super far into the book, but it's very interesting to me because, that's a huge area that I'm working with is, younger female, like, teen athletes that are struggling with underfueling, body image, disordered eating, things along those lines. And so a lot of these girls that are, they're young, like, a lot of them are like 13, 17, whatever, or, early 20s at these elite levels for gymnastics and figure skating, which is very much focused on aesthetics. So, they are very concerned about their weight and body composition and all these things. And so, unfortunately, when you are, as you get older, you're putting on more muscle, and especially as you go through puberty, your body develops more as a female, you put on more muscle, you put on more body fat, and now you don't have that look like a boy, like a teenage boy, essentially. And so then coaches are like, oh, wow, this isn't going to fly. So anyways, in the book, there was, I don't remember her name, but she was a figure skater. She did not get her period ever until she was 25 years old. And I was like, that is crazy, 25 years old. But that's what they're going for. They're pushing for you to not go through puberty, not to get your period, because then all those changes happen. But then, of course, you would have to eat enough and, not train too much so that your body's getting what it needs so that it can keep up with having a cycle every month. But yeah, just very interesting.
Yes, there is a lot of that happening in the world. And that book, I think that book was written a while ago. Is it?
Yeah,
It's an older
not
book,
a new
right?
book.
Yeah. And so, share an example. My sister-in-law was a D1 cheerleader for a really awesome university. I won't share the name of the university, but she went in, she was a flyer, and they had to wear the crop top, like, cheerleading uniforms. And her coach said to her, like, it looks like you're gaining a little bit of weight. Like, you need to start cutting weight, and yeah. And just like, she's like, ever since that, she's completely recovered now. She's got 2 little boys. And she's like, from that point on, that was it. It was like the point of no return from that one coach saying something to her about her body. And then, of course, we're surrounded by it, right? Like, who doesn't talk about what they look like or make comments on how people look? And like, everybody is seemingly exercising and eating healthy. And then if you're not, like, you're looking at the people that are exercising all the time and eating a certain way as like some prestigious like being that they're able to go to the gym every day. And like, so there's just so much to it. There's so much to it. And then there's social media. Like, social media wasn't a huge thing when I was younger.
Right.
Like, yeah. And that's
I don't know about you,
thing.
but I mean, I sometimes get people calling me and they're like, I want to look like so-and-so off of Instagram. And I'm like, but that's, everybody has like a totally different genetic makeup. Like, we have no idea what that person's doing. They've been training for a number of years. And so, social media is not a good tool sometimes. And especially situations like this, for sure. So,
yeah. And that's what attracted me to CrossFit, Kristen, was like, I was like, oh, snap, I want to look like those girls. Like, that's what attracted me to CrossFit. Like, no. So I wanted to share, just unless you had other questions that were on the top of your head, but I would love to share, like, what are some of the things to like look out for?
That was exactly my next question. So go for it.
Okay. I guess I was reading your mind. Okay. So this pertains to athletes or to recreational athletes, or just if you just consider yourself going to the gym and an active woman. So if you are regularly exercising and you are taking 0 to no rest days or active recovery days. So my thing was, I went to CrossFit 5 days a week. Saturday was like the group WOD. And then Sunday was my active recovery, which was like a 3-mile run or something like that, or a super long walk. Like, there was never a rest day. I'm talking like at least 2 complete rest days, like where you're not doing anything. Maybe a gentle walk for a half hour at night with your husband after, dinner, whatever. But like, no, you're not going to the gym. You're not planning a workout and so forth. So another thing is guilt if exercise isn't done. Like, you shouldn't feel guilty. And whoever, I don't know where that got put in our heads, Kristen, because I too was one that, like, if I didn't get my workout in, I felt guilty. But it was like more the guilt of like, oh my God, I'm going to lose all my progress if I don't go to the gym. Like, I am going to gain weight. Like, that was the guilt. Or my day's going to be off if I don't, like, if your day's going to be off if you don't exercise, that's something to think about and consider. So choosing exercise over most things. So for example, I'll share, like, if friends were like, yeah, we're going to go out tonight, I'd be like, oh no, like, I plan to go to the gym tonight, or I got to wake up early. Sorry, can't go.
Yep.
That's just one example. Or one thing, I had a client of mine tell me, she's like, back in the day, Cynthia, she's like, I traveled a lot for work and I would plan my flight schedule so it wouldn't mess up my morning workout.
Wow.
Right. So things like that, which, I mean, to one person, someone might be like, oh my gosh, you're so disciplined.
Yes. And that's how it's viewed, I think, for most people. But yeah.
But are you really disciplined? So choosing or counting exercise only if it's intense. So only if you get your heart rate up, only if you get a sweat in. So not like if you did gentle yoga. I'll use myself again for an example. I always wanted to learn yoga. Kristen always wanted to learn it. But then I was like, well, like I'm going to have to get my workout in, then do yoga because yoga doesn't count.
Yeah.
Like, no, yoga counts. Even if you don't sweat, it counts. And then, you could potentially be out there and not exercising at all and not eating enough. So that's also a thing. But I don't think that's really pertaining to the ladies listening here. Talk about eating, healthy eating, limiting calories or portion controls, counting macros, entering your foods in MyFitnessPal for the day before even eating them. Or saying like, oh, I can't, your boyfriend calls you and it's like, oh, let's go out for ice cream tonight. It's a hot summer night. And you're like, no, I can't. Like, I already hit my macros. Like, no, your body isn't a frigging calculation. And you deserve to have these foods and have fun with the people in your life, enjoying foods. What's another one? So I said counting calories or macros, only eating at certain times. This was a big one for me. And I giggle because I would work as a dietitian before in the clinical setting and I'd be like, oh, it's not 10 o'clock yet. Cannot have my snack. I'd be hungry an hour early. No, it is not time yet. Your body is not when you're hungry, you need to eat. And think about it this way. Like when you have to pee, you're not like, oh, you already peed. You can't pee again. Or it's not 10 o'clock yet. You can't go to the bathroom. So hunger is also a biological function, just like you having to go to the bathroom. So basing all meals on past or future meals, example being you ate a bagel for breakfast and then, your friend is like, oh, we're going to go to this, this tasty sandwich place. Oh, I already had a bagel. I can't have a sandwich for lunch today. So that's one example. Or saying like, oh, I'm going out to my favorite restaurant and I know I'm going to just allow myself to eat whatever it is that I want. I have to be good today. Maybe it's on Wednesday or something like that. So avoiding social situations, avoiding certain food groups. And I'm not talking about, because you're allergic or anything like that. So some of the physical signs, you guys can have normal labs. Like so many women go to the doctor, Kristen, are like, well, my labs are normal. My doctor said I'm fine. No, like your period's missing. That's not normal. And so what happens with these labs, just a really quick side note, is that they appear normal because in your follicular phase, which you're kind of quote unquote stuck in with HA, your estrogen is a little bit on the lower side. Your FSH and LH are a little bit lower as well. So if your labs look normal, it's not normal if your period's missing. Thin uterine lining, if you get an ultrasound, if they're like, oh, your lining is thin. Polycystic appearing ovaries, like I said, those are typically, your follicles. No cervical mucus or little cervical mucus. So that's like discharge in your underwear or when you wipe. Undiagnosed infertility. So if you go to the fertility doctor, they're like, oh, we don't know what's going on. Bleed or no bleed off of progesterone. A lot of doctors will prescribe progesterone to kickstart or to withdraw bleed. But if you have HA, you guys, progesterone, like you don't have much of a lining to shed. So if you don't get a bleed on progesterone, that usually indicates your level of severity of HA is a little bit higher. But I don't want you guys to fret if you've tried that before because you still have to do the necessary things to get your period back, regardless if you get a bleed or not. So, and there's no indication of like, oh, I got to bleed off progesterone or I didn't and how long it takes to get your period back. So no libido, that was also a thing for me. I'm like, I just must not be interested in sex or like being intimate. No, I didn't have any sex hormones, And I get this also from women. They're like, well, I don't want to have babies. Like, and the thing is like, you may not have that maternal like desire for babies because you don't have the maternal hormones circulating in your body. So
I have a story about that myself. Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah. When my husband and I got married, my sister and my best friend, who was my maid of honor, was like, you should have had babies like yesterday. You need to hurry up, And so we waited a couple years, but I had been on birth control, but I was also training for a figure competition. So my first year of marriage, I trained for a figure competition. So I was training 2 hours a day, like 6 days a week. But I was on birth control. So I didn't know that, I wasn't getting a period. When I went to I had talked to my doctor, my OBGYN, just because I was, I think I had like a yearly exam scheduled or whatever. And I was saying, that we were thinking about trying to get pregnant. We also were trying to adopt at the same time. It was kind of like, yeah, whatever, works out for us is what we'll do. But so anyways, the doctor was like, oh, well, once you go off birth control, you should get your period back right away. Well, I did not. I did not get a period for 6 months. And so I went back and the doctor was like, well, we're going to do an ultrasound And so they did an ultrasound and say exactly like you said, you have a large cyst on one side. Just come back in a month and everything will probably be fine. And then I went back in a month. And she also told me, she's like, you need to eat more. You need to stop exercising. So I actually did start eating more. I allowed myself to actually like go and have ice cream and, things like that I wouldn't normally have had. And then I went back in a month and they're like, well, you now have more cysts on the other side. We're going to put you on, a cycle of estrogen and progesterone to, kickstart things. Well, lo and behold, I actually did get pregnant in there after, so many months of eating more and training less. And so then when it didn't work, I called the doctor. Well, I think my mom was like, why don't you just take a pregnancy test? And I was like, okay. So I took a pregnancy test and lo and behold, I was pregnant.
So, Kristen, did you ever get your period back before your first
No,
pregnancy?
no.
Okay.
And when I went in for my ultrasound for my son, I believe I was 14 weeks pregnant.
Wow.
I was flipping out because on the ultrasound, it was a whole baby. I kept saying before this ultrasound, I'm like, I'm just going to go in there and they're going to be like, no, Kristen, you're just getting fat. Like, you're not pregnant. You're just fat, And lo and behold, there was an entire baby on that screen.
Wow.
Like, you could see all 10 fingers, all 10 toes. And that ultrasound tech probably thought I was insane because I was like, oh my gosh, like what is happening? But it was 6 months that I did not get a period.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it was because I was overtraining and not eating enough because I was on birth control. It was masking it. And who knows how long it was masking it for. I probably, if I had to guess, probably a year, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that. And, it's amazing when that does happen for women that they're like, I ended up getting pregnant before my first period even came back.
Yeah.
It's such a miracle. But it goes to show that your body was ovulating and if you didn't get pregnant, Kristen, you would have had a period a couple weeks later.
Right.
So yeah, well, that's amazing. And I'm sure, so it was,
Crazy.
what a shock, shock in a good way.
Yeah.
But yeah, and unfortunately, a doctor, I'm glad to hear that your doctor was like, you need to chill, like, and eat more and rest more. That's good. But also just to touch upon like bikini competitions or figure bodybuilding, whatever it is that I know there's different categories. It's so unhealthy for the female body. But the thing is, like, we don't really exactly know that. And then depending what your out or what your goal is for it, So, but I don't want to get too much into that because, whether it's bodybuilding or training too much because you're a swimmer or CrossFit
Right.
or
It could be
whatever.
any sport.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So what do you think are kind of like the biggest misconceptions that perhaps anybody listening would have about their menstrual health and HA?
So biggest misconception that a missing period is fine and like come back in 3 months or 6 months and like you should be fine. No, birth control pill will kickstart or progesterone will kickstart or any kind of contraceptive or hormone replacement will kickstart. That's not true. The only thing that's going to kickstart your hypothalamus, because hypothalamic amenorrhea, meaning like it is impacting your hypothalamus, is getting your body into a state of homeostasis or equilibrium. And I just want to say, sometimes this doesn't happen to everybody, right? So, but if you're at the age where you want to have babies and you're not able to get pregnant, it's really important that you do explore maybe somewhere on the spectrum that you are with HA instead of doing the, unexplained infertility, like track your luteal phase, see if it's long enough, make sure you're ovulating. And then could there be other things? Of course. So another misconception is PCOS, like diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
HA is a diagnosis of exclusion, meaning you do kind of have to rule other things out, such as PCOS, such as a pituitary tumor. So sometimes there can be like a tiny little growth on your pituitary in your brain, which can impact kind of your whole missing period. But also, if you can just get an MRI and just say, can you rule this out for me? So HA is a diagnosis of exclusion, but if you kind of like, I guess I don't want to look for the word respond, but like if you are like, oh, this kind of sounds like me, chances are it is HA. So another misconception is like your labs are normal, you're fine. Like, no, your period's missing. It is not fine, even if your labs say that they're normal. And another thing is that you're at a healthy weight. So you don't like, I don't see why this is a problem. This only happens in women with eating disorders or like low body weight or low BMI. And that's not necessarily true. HA can happen in a woman that has a obese, overweight BMI. So I think those are the biggest misconceptions of that. And at the end of the day, the only thing that is going to bring you a true natural period back is enough food for your body and enough rest. And then working through any mindset difficulties that are coming up. I think the biggest thing for me was I started to eat more. I started to rest more. I didn't see the results I was looking for until I really worked on my mindset behind how I was feeling about my body, how I was feeling about my relationship with food. And I was such a type A driven woman, like go, 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 do. And I never slowed down. And so it took me 2 rounds of fertility treatment, which was so grueling, so much lab work, ultrasounds, travel, talk about weight gain. Those hormones are going to make you gain weight. So yeah, I think those probably are the biggest misconceptions. And that, if your trainer isn't aware or your coach isn't aware of HA, I wouldn't be surprised, but, advocate for yourself. Like a missing period is an injury. It's not a physical injury. You can't see it, but it is causing troubles behind the scenes that may not be affecting you right in the here and now, but could definitely and will definitely if left untreated. And it's reversible. So that's another thing. I've had doctors also say you'll never be able to get pregnant naturally, or you'll need IVF, or you'll need a surrogate. Like,
gosh, yeah.
So also know that. So
yes,
yeah,
for sure. Okay, so let's say somebody is listening to this, they're struggling, and they're like, "Okay, Cynthia, I need your help. How do they contact you? How can they work with you? That type of thing."
Yeah. So I would say for your first stop. It doesn't have to be your first stop, but I have a podcast. It's called the Period Recovery Podcast. And that is, you're going to find so much amazing information there and stories of hope. I showcase a lot of my clients on there. So you guys can see like this is possible, because I didn't think it was possible for me and they didn't think it was possible for them. And so podcast, and then also my Instagram page, period.nutritionist. And if you're like, oh my gosh, this is me, like sign me up yesterday. I work with women across the world, and I do that through a very individualized community platform where we take into account your personal history, but then you're also in a community of other women going through the same thing, which offers a super supportive environment, because the rest of the world is doing the complete opposite of what we need to do in order to be our true healthiest self. So yeah, I do that in 12 weeks. And my hope is that you don't just get your period back, but you really learn to live a full, free life. And in essence, like feel like you're getting your life back.
Perfect. Okay. Well, I found this all very interesting. So I really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show and explain all of this. And I hope listeners got as much out of this as I did. So thank you.
Yes. Thank you for having me, Kristen.
Hey friend, if this podcast inspired you, encouraged you, or changed you, I would love for you to leave me a review and share it with a girlfriend who will find it helpful or inspiring. That is the best way you can thank me and help me share my knowledge so I can help more people just like you. I'm so thankful that you spent this time with me today, and I'd love to connect with you. Join my Facebook group, Female Sports Nutrition, or send me a DM on Instagram, or hop on over to my website, elitenutritionperformance.com. I'll see you back here next week.